Have you ever wondered if your body holds secret meetings at night to decide where to store more fat just to surprise you in the morning? Just kidding. Fasting, the ultimate test of willpower where your stomach starts to sound like an angry gremlin. Fear not. I'm here to arm you with 4 ninja-level fasting tips to navigate these growling waters. And don't dash off too soon. I've got the lowdown on Vicky, the fasting phenom who bid adieu to 178 pounds. She insists she didn't lose the weight, she dumped it and changed the lock so it couldn't sneak back in the middle of the night. If my last video was Fasting 101, consider this the masterclass. Ready for the first slice of wisdom? It's all about finding your tribe. Tackling fasting solo is like trying to do a group project on your own. It's possible, but why torture yourself? Whether it's for fasting, dieting, quitting the midnight snack raids, or even giving up that third coffee before 10 a.m., everything's better with buddies. We're pack animals after all. So, scout out your support squad, those folks who'll cheer you on, swap survival tactics, and not judge you for talking to your fridge. Dive into the online wilderness or local haunts to find them. Let the quest begin. It's easier than ever to go onto various social media platforms and find people who are going to be supportive of intermittent fasting. There's always going to support you. You might want to keep it quiet because some people will discourage you from fasting because they simply don't understand. Even though it's been used for thousands of years, not everybody is going to be supportive because there's a lot of conflicting opinion out there. Finding that supportive group is sometimes the difference in succeeding and failing. Tip number 2, give your body some time to adjust. Remember that when you're fasting, what you're trying to do is get your body to use some of the stores of energy that it's carrying. So if you have a lot of body fat and you haven't fasted much, your body really doesn't know how to metabolize that fat. It's mostly used to using the food that you're eating. So it can take up to a few weeks to even a few months to get used to the process of not eating so frequently. Your body can use really 2 different types of fuel. Just like a hybrid car, you can use electricity or you can use gas. Your body is much the same, so it can use glucose and it can use fat. If you're eating a typical diet, which is relatively high in carbohydrates, and you're eating all the time, which is sort of the standard way that people eat today, then you're mostly using carbohydrates. However, when you're fasting, once you've gone through those carbohydrates, you need to use body fat, which in scientific terms is called triglycerides. As you get used to using the triglycerides, then your body becomes more efficient at using it and it feels more natural. So while you're switching over, getting your body used to using fat as a fuel, you might notice that you have less energy, for example. So it does take some time to adjust. An easy way to transition is to first go to a low carbohydrate diet or a very low one, such as a ketogenic diet. You're eating a lot of dietary fat, and the way that the body metabolizes, dietary fat versus body fat is the exact same. So it's an easy transition to go from a low carbohydrate diet and intermittent fasting compared to a relatively high carbohydrate one. Tip number 3. Fasting is not an excuse to eat whatever you want. If you're trying to lose weight, then it really comes down to 2 things: what you eat and how often you eat, or the question of when to eat. And these 2 questions are separate, so fasting doesn't tell you anything about what you eat when you do eat. And what you eat when you do eat doesn't tell you anything about how often you're eating. There's 2 completely separate notions, and they're both important. So even if you're fasting, you're going to get more mileage out of that if you also follow a proper diet. So if you are going to fast and then you eat pizza and chips and beer, well, you might just cancel out the weight loss benefits. So make sure that you're attacking both of those questions, what you're eating and when you're eating. And if you do both of them, then you're going to do a lot better. Tip number 4, act as if nothing is happening. Remember that when you're fasting, there's no real difference in what it is that you can and can't do. You're simply changing where your body gets energy. When you eat, you're going to use the energy from that food, and you're going to store some of that as body fat and as sugar. When you don't eat or when you're fasting, you're simply going to take the energy that you've stored away and use it. If you have weight to lose, if you have excess body fat that you'd like to get rid of, then there's plenty of food. Think of it as a refrigerator and a freezer. If you have a lot of food in your freezer, you don't have to go to the store every day, and you don't have to change what you're doing because you can always get some steaks out of the freezer, you can get some vegetables out of the freezer and eat that. Your body is the same. If you're not eating, you're simply going to dip into those stores of food energy just like you go into the freezer. That's simply food that you stored away, so there's no difference. You don't need to change what you're doing. Some people think, oh, can I exercise? Of course. You can exercise when you're eating. You can exercise when you're fasting. Your body is going to figure out where it's going to get its energy from. Is it the food or is it your body fat? If you're exercising in a fasted state, you're going to take that energy from your body fat, and that's great. And the same goes for any of your other daily activities. So whether you have a big meeting or whether you have to be awake for school or anything else that you're doing, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, like you have to concentrate, you're going to be able to do the same. When you start eating again, the same thing goes. Don't focus on eating a huge meal after you fasted. So for example, if you have done a 24-hour fast, you ate dinner. You did 24 hours of fasting, you ate dinner the next day, you don't have to force yourself to eat more. Eat as normally as possible. Your body eating the calories that it needs from your body fat during breakfast and lunch. Instead of eating food, you're eating your body fat. So therefore, during dinner, you don't need to eat more because that's where you've taken those calories out, and that's the only way you're going to lose that fat. So act as if nothing has changed. So let me tell you about Vicky. She had topped out at 365 pounds, and luckily, she found a video testimonial on YouTube and thought about doing some fasting. She found some videos that I had made and started off with a 16-8 protocol and then moved to 24 and 1 meal a day, and that seemed to work for her. The biggest issue, however, has been emotional eating, and that's where she's really kept to fasting as a way of keeping herself in control. She says, don't bite off more than you can chew. What she means by this is to start with something that you can handle and then gradually move up. So she started with shorter fasts, then moved her way up into the 20-hour fast and the 1 meal a day. Things that she knew she could handle. She also kept in mind the reason why she was doing this. She wanted to lose that weight to really get healthy. She says, make sure that you enjoy the journey. There will be some ups and downs. There's going to be some awesome days and some horrible days. But the key is consistency and sticking to it. And the only way to do that is to love the journey every day. That's great advice, Vicky, and congratulations. I think you're doing an amazing job. So I hope those tips have helped you. Give them a try. And hey, if they do help you, then make sure you share it with some of your friends because they may find it helpful as well. We've all been there before. You start losing weight, you go on a new diet, the weight's coming off, everything's great, and then you hit the dreaded plateau. You're still on your diet, but the weight is just not coming off. What can you do to get through that dreaded weight loss plateau? We'll cover that coming right up. Stick around till the end. I'm going to share how Chuck was able to keep losing weight. So the first thing you can do is you can keep doing what you're doing. So sometimes with diet, it just takes a little bit of time. Your weight isn't always going to keep going down. It's going to come off very quickly at the beginning. And sometimes it does plateau for a little bit. So most people want to know, what can you do to break through? I'm going to give you 7 strategies that you can try to break through that weight loss plateau. So the first thing you can try is to change up the foods that you're eating. One of the biggest problems we see in our clinic is the sweeteners. So try cutting them out. So most people know that sugar isn't very good for you, but a lot of people think, oh well, why don't I have a diet soda? It doesn't have sugar, it doesn't have carbs, and there's no calories, so it must be okay, right? It sounds very logical, but it doesn't really work in real life. And it's not clear why. It's probably because the sweetness actually makes us want to eat more sweet foods or makes us hungrier. So if we're stimulating the appetite, then that's going to work against you when you're trying to lose weight. It's going to make it really hard to do fasting. It's going to be really hard to stick to your diet if you're always going to be tempted by something sweet. When you cut out all the sweeteners, your palate adapts, and then you get used to eating foods that are not sweet, and sometimes you find that they're actually just too sweet. The second thing you can try to do is change your diet. And that sounds very strange because if you found a diet that's working for you that you're losing weight on, why would you want to change it? So this applies to all diets. So if you're paleo, for example, well, the problem is you can't get more paleo if you're already paleo. So what you have to do is try and change it to something else because your body has obviously adapted to that diet and isn't losing weight anymore. You can always switch back later, but what it does is it changes things up so that your body doesn't get used to one thing, and you might be able to just trigger that weight loss again because you're in a rut now and you want to make your body sort of be a little bit off balance so it doesn't get used to it. So number 1 and 2 are changing what we're eating. The third thing you can do is, instead of changing what we're eating, is to change when we're eating. So changing up your fasting periods. So intermittent fasting is a great way to lose weight, but there's lots of fasting variations. So what you can do is try to change your fast so that instead of doing a fasting variation, you might want to do a little cleaner fast. So maybe you want to go to a water-only fast or just herbal tea. Again, just something to shake things up. And the fourth thing that you can do is increase the duration of your fasting. And these two are changing the way that you fast. So you're changing your diet, what you're eating, and you're changing your fasting, or how often you're not eating. So if you're used to doing a 16-hour fast, you can simply go up on the duration, change it to a 20-hour fast or a 24-hour fast. If you're used to doing a lot of longer fasts, maybe do a lot of shorter fasts, but more frequently. And it doesn't really matter what it is that you do. Again, you're just trying to keep your body off balance so that you're able to get out of a rut. Remember, nothing's set in stone. If you're doing worse with what you change, you can always change back. And the other thing you can do is, if you're used to doing a certain type of fast, do a different type for a couple of weeks and then switch back to your usual, and you might just find that you've gotten through. A couple of the strategies that we find that a lot of people haven't tried are going up to the 36-hour fast. So you're going through a full day of fasting. That is, if you ate dinner, for example, on Monday at 7 p.m. and you don't eat until Wednesday at 7 a.m., that's a 36-hour fast. But the power of that is that you've got those 2 periods of sleeping where you're almost getting that fat-burning period for free. And sometimes that's enough to jog yourself out of that rut and get that weight coming down again. Those first 4 strategies were focused on changing our diet and our fasting, what we're eating, and when we're eating. But you might be surprised that in our clinic, we find that there's a lot of other reasons why people might get stuck in a rut. And one of the biggest things is stress. Stress causes all kinds of bad problems, but stress also causes certain hormones to go up, such as cortisol, and if you have chronic stress over a long period of time, that can also make you gain weight. That's the reason cortisol, or its synthetic variants such as prednisone, can cause weight gain. So if stress is a big reason why you're sort of in a rut, then you need to focus on dealing not just with the diet, but also with the stress. So number 6, one of the biggest problems we see once again is sleep. Sleep. Make sure you get some sleep, because if you're sleep deprived, you're going to really have a lot of trouble losing weight. This is a big problem for many of us because we don't sleep properly, and there's a whole lot of videos as to what happens to your body as you sleep. Essentially, you're resting your brain, you're consolidating your memories, and that is going to allow your stress levels to come down. Try to make sure that you don't stay in bed if you're not sleepy. The worst thing you can do is just lie in bed and look up at the ceiling and think, I can't sleep. I can't sleep. So make sure that you're sleepy when you go to bed. Some people think, oh, well, I should go to bed at 10 o'clock, but if you're not sleepy, you don't want to lie in bed for 2 hours. It's called cleaning up your sleep hygiene. For many of us, it's getting enough sleep. That can really make a difference to your weight as well. The sixth thing is also about stress. And we always think that dealing with stress is a passive thing. That is, oh, you should lie in front of the TV and you're going to relax. That's actually not the way it works. Relaxation is actually an active process, and there's lots of ways to reduce that stress. One of the best is meditation. So there's the classic transcendental meditation. Not a lot of people do that anymore, but it is very effective. But there's all different ways of moving meditation as well, which is basically trying to still the minds of something such as yoga or Tai Chi, very popular, or hanging out with friends, talking to people, being part of a movement, helping other people. Those are all behavior, emotional ways to relieve stress. And they're very important because human touch, a sense of community, is a really important part of what it means to be us. If you don't relieve the stress and your stress levels go up, you're going to do things like stress eating, and then your weight is going to go up. And that is also a big problem. One of the best ways to get rid of stress, in addition to these sort of moving meditations, is exercise. So exercise has a lot of benefits. Weight loss generally is not one of them, but in this case, sometimes you can use high-intensity exercise to help yourself break through that plateau. And this is actually what our body is designed for. The reason our cortisol goes up, because in the days of prehistoric days when we're under stress, is usually some kind of survival threat. So if we saw a lion, our stress would go up because it's going to eat us. So our body floods with energy, and then we run very fast, or we fight. It's called the fight or flight response. In either case, that high-intensity exercise is what relieves the stress. Now, stress is different. It tends to be chronic. You have worries about money, worries about mortgage payments, worries about your kids or your spouse or your parents or whatever it is. These don't go away, but the way to relieve them, exercise, is still an excellent way. So all of these factors are ways that you can use to think about to break through that weight loss plateau, and they're all to do with stress. So there you have it, and you can think of them as what you can do in terms of changing your diet, changing your fasting, and managing your stress. And if you can do those things, you can certainly break through that weight plateau and move on to the next stage. So what's Chuck's best tip? Well, Chuck, when he started fasting, was terrified. He was worried that this would be the worst thing he could do. He couldn't do it, but he just dove right in. He started just by skipping breakfast. Then it wasn't so bad. So then he went to skipping lunch a couple of days a week, and then he followed up with a 48-hour fast, and then at the end of the month, he thought, hey, maybe a 3-day fast. But by changing the fasting duration each time, he's able to keep his body a little bit guessing, and the weight kept coming off. And now he likes to do some longer fasts through the year, maybe 5 to 7 days. And by understanding the physiology of what's happening during fasting, he's able to keep from bolting in terror. Chuck's best tip is make hunger your friend because you're not going anywhere without him. What he means is that the hunger is always going to be there, whether it's a physical hunger or a psychological hunger for the food. So learn that it's going to be there and embrace it as a friend, and think to yourself, when you get hungry, hey, this just means that I'm on the right track. That's it for this week. If you learned something, share it with your friend. Maybe they'll learn something too. And if you enjoyed it, well, do me a favor and just go ahead and hit that like button, the one that looks like this. And I'll see you next time.